Do you remember those few years when zombies kind of took over pop culture? We had Call of Duty zombies, Zombieland, Dead Rising, Plants vs. Zombies, The Walking Dead. Right in the middle of zombie mania came a little game called Dead Island. Developed by Polish studio Techland, Dead Island was released in 2011 and, despite not aging all that well in my opinion, it has nonetheless seemed to endure in people's memories. The amount of videos I've seen on YouTube retroactively reviewing this game is surprising, given the fact that it's 15 years old now and has arguably been completely superseded by the next zombie franchise that Techland created, Dying Light. So now it's my turn to throw my hat in the ring and talk about what it is that makes Dead Island have so much staying power all these years later. I think there's two main things this game does really well, and these are probably the elements that have helped this game stand out after all of these years. The setting and the combat. Let's talk about the setting first. Dead Island takes place on a fictional tropical island in the Pacific called Banoi. The setting alone really differentiated Dead Island from the other zombie media at the time. A lot of zombie movies and games take place in American cities, mostly confined urban areas. Things like shopping malls, deserted city streets, decaying suburbia. Dead Island decided to take the apocalypse to a tropical paradise, which ended up being a great spin on the genre. The game is split up into three main open world areas: the resort, the city, and the jungle. You start in the resort, and that is also the best and most memorable part of the game. There's just something really fun about running through water parks, tropical bungalows, and idyllic beaches, all while fighting off hordes of the undead. The juxtaposition of the beautiful setting and the grotesque monsters filling it works really well. There's also enough variety within the zone that it keeps things pretty fresh for a while, even if you are running back and forth in the same areas over and over. Just when it started to feel like I needed a change in scenery, the game does just that and moves you along to the city. The city is naturally much more dense than the resort, both in the amount of buildings and cars, but also the amount of zombies. Unfortunately though, the city is much less visually varied than the resort and is even pretty drab. But they do try to make up for this some by increasing the difficulty by dialing up the number of zombies you have to fight at any given time, as well as throwing in new special varieties of zombies to deal with. Overall though, I do think the city is my least favorite of the zones due to its lack of variety and beige color palette, as well as housing one of my least favorite parts of the entire game: the sewers. You have to go back and forth through the sewers a few times, and it is torturous each time you do. It's dark and claustrophobic, which I don't think works very well for this game. It would have felt more at home in an outright horror game, but while having some horror elements, Dead Island is first and foremost an action game. While the city is drab and monotonous to look at, the sewer is even worse in both of those respects. Thankfully, you don't have to spend too much time there before never having to return again. The last major zone you travel to is the jungle, which is split up into two smaller zones, but they're functionally the same. The jungle brings back some of the good elements from the resort, namely the more open spaces and the tropical foliage, but is much more rural and underdeveloped compared to the fancy resort. The jungle doesn't have quite the variety of the resort, but it is much more appealing to look at than the city. The jungle is lush with all kinds of different plants. It has big changes in elevation and interesting landmarks dotted throughout. Despite this game showing its age in the visual department, it really does have some good art direction that shines through the dated graphics. While the setting and visuals are a high point for Dead Island, I think the single best part of the game is the combat. The feel of the combat is what initially hooked me and is what kept me playing to the end, despite some of its glaring flaws we'll get into in a minute. Other than Techland's later games, I haven't played a zombie game that provided combat that feels this satisfying. The biggest thing that contributes to the satisfying feeling is the impact of the combat. Zombies are very reactive when you attack them. They react very differently depending on not only what weapon you are using, but where you hit them with it. As you might be able to see in the footage, there's a crosshair in the center of the screen that, when close to an enemy, will lock onto certain parts of their body depending on where you are aiming. You might be able to knock their feet out from underneath them with a well-aimed leg shot. Aiming for the arms can allow you to either break them if you're using a blunt weapon, preventing them from using that arm to attack afterward, or outright slice them off if you're using a bladed weapon. Same thing with the head too. You can either crush their skulls or completely decapitate them if the circumstances are right. Speaking of weapons, they give you quite a large arsenal to play with. Melee weapons are the primary focus, but they do give you some guns and explosives to play with too. More on those in a second. The melee weapons come in many varieties, and each of them feels unique from each other. They've all got different ranges, different attack speeds, and different stamina costs. Smaller weapons can be swung repeatedly but do less damage, while things like sledgehammers are very slow but can be very devastating with every swing. The weapons all felt really good to use on their own, and that's without even taking into account the weapon modification system. Throughout the game world, you'll find schematics that allow you to craft modified weapons. These mods can range from minor cosmetic changes, accompanied by stat boosts, all the way to full-on elemental effects. Unlocking new weapon mods and trying them out was one of the most fun parts of the game for me. I loved building spiked clubs, electric maces, or baseball bats with saw blades on the end, and then getting to test them out. The combat would have been fun without the weapon mods, but their inclusion made it even better for me. I unfortunately cannot say the same about the guns. Melee combat is the primary focus of the game, but guns are available pretty early into it and become necessary in later parts when fighting human enemies. I was surprised by the fact that you actually have to fight humans quite a bit, especially in the jungle section of the map, and these parts are where the combat feels significantly worse. Dead Island is just not a very good shooter, and I'm shocked that they make you do it so much. The gunplay doesn't feel particularly good. There isn't much variety in the guns you find like there is with the melee weapons. The animations using the guns are lackluster, and so are the models used for them. These sections of the game where you have shootouts with human enemies feel like they're from a totally different game than when you were fighting zombies with melee. There's a short DLC campaign included in the Definitive Edition release that is pretty much fully focused on gunplay, and that part of the game really solidified to me that I think Dead Island would have been better either with very minimal inclusion of guns or outright removing them entirely. It's good that the melee combat was as fun as it was because the gun combat felt like a chore.
I need more champagne. I fucking love champagne. Can you find some for me?
Like I said before, the setting and the combat are the standout elements of the game. Those two components are strong enough on their own that I think they make the game overall worth playing, but almost every other element of Dead Island is pretty lackluster. Let's start with the writing. The story and character writing is best described as forgettable. You play as one of 4 playable characters, and none of them really have much of a backstory or strong motivations other than a little text scroll at the beginning. The most notable trait about them is they are somehow immune to this virus that comes into play in the story. You mostly hear them talk through a series of generic voice lines that are reused throughout your interactions with other characters in the world. These other characters you meet are basically as boring and generic as video game characters can be. No one has strong characterization. All of these people exist to give you quests to do, and that's about it. The overall story is little more than a series of fetch quests and chores with the loosest of narrative threads connecting them all. Seriously, calling the main story of this game a story at all is kind of stretching the definition of the word. You're basically just going from one group of survivors to another, helping them survive by gathering resources for them or completing various tasks. Rinse and repeat for hours until finally something resembling a narrative appears. You make contact with a mysterious voice over the radio who says that since you are immune to the virus, he should be able to make a vaccine from your DNA. Trouble is, though, the person on the other end of the radio is stuck at a high-security prison on a small island off the coast of Benoi with no means of escape, so you need to come to him. This is what takes you to the jungle and then ultimately to the prison, and there you'll find out about the source of the outbreak, but it's not anything super inventive or particularly compelling. I couldn't tell you what themes this story is trying to present or what I'm supposed to be left feeling after rolling credits. The story is really just there to have a reason to keep giving you quests, which is just a reason to have you explore the island and engage with the combat. Speaking of quests, that's actually one of the worst parts of the game. All of the quests can be put into a few categories. You've got your basic fetch quest, go here and get this item for me. You've got some basic tasks kind of quests, go here and restart these generators for us or something like that. You've got collect X number of items quests, like I need 5 bandages to treat the wounded at camp. But the worst of them all is the escort quest. There are a handful of escort quests sprinkled throughout the game, and they are all a complete slog. There is one part in the back half of the game where you have to do a super long multi-stage escort quest, which took me more than half an hour to complete. I was escorting NPCs for more than 30 minutes straight. Thank God developers have mostly abandoned this kind of quest design because it really isn't fun to play at all. Dead Island does occasionally throw in a quest that has you defending an area against a swarm of zombies, and while nothing revolutionary, these quests were a breath of fresh air compared to everything else on offer. The quests are split up into main and side quests, but there really isn't too much of a distinction in their design, other than a few of the main quests having a bit more spectacle than usual. I have a Steam achievement for completing 75 quests, but I can only remember maybe 5 of them in total after having just beaten the game. I haven't played Skyrim in 7 years, and I can recall like 10 quests off the top of my head without much thinking, and it's not like Skyrim's quest design is anything extraordinary. ordinary. Dead Island's quest design is just really boring. After finishing Dead Island, I was left thinking to myself, how many bad elements can a good game have before it isn't good anymore? It's pretty reductive to lump games into a binary category of good or bad, but if I had to, I would say that overall Dead Island has more good than bad. I think the two things they focused the most development effort on were executed quite well, those being the setting and the combat. Even if the things surrounding them were either mediocre or outright bad, the strength of the combat and the setting were enough to make the game enjoyable despite its many flaws. I'm a huge fan of zombies as a concept, so for someone like me, I felt like I had a good enough time playing Dead Island. For most people though, I'd probably just recommend them playing Dying Light instead. Techland took the design philosophies they established in the Dead Island games and improved them pretty significantly in their spiritual successor series. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. Comment down below, let me know what you think about Dead Island. Alright, see ya.